Don't tell Evelyn. If she dies during delivery, Hartwell becomes mine anyway. That was the sentence I heard through the half-closed door of a private maternity clinic, spoken by the man I had trusted since I was 11 years old. My husband, Noah Vale. The boy my family had taken in when he had no home. The boy my mother fed at our kitchen table. The boy my father sent to the best schools, mentored through business school, and later appointed as managing director of Hartwell Group, the company my family had spent 3 generations building. The boy I grew up beside, the man I married, the father of the twins growing inside me. For most of my life, I believed Noah's attention was love. When he answered questions for me, I thought he was protecting me. When he took over meetings, I thought he was easing my burden. When he spoke privately with my doctors, I thought he was shielding me from fear. When he asked me to sign temporary authorizations because I was pregnant and tired, I thought that was what husbands did when they loved you. I did not understand that control can sound gentle when it knows your name. I did not understand that the safest voice in your life can become the one that gives the order to erase you. And I did not understand, until that afternoon, that Noah had not spent years learning how to protect me. He had spent years learning how to replace me. The first time I saw Noah Vale, he was standing in the back hallway of my parents' house, with snow melting from the ends of his sleeves and a paper bag clutched tightly against his chest. I was 11 years old, wearing a velvet dress I hated, waiting for a dinner I did not want to attend, in a house so polished and quiet that even grief would have been expected to remove its shoes before entering. Noah was 12, thin in a way that made my mother go still, with cheeks hollowed by more than winter, and eyes that seemed to understand rooms before anyone spoke. Inside them, my father stood behind him, one hand resting lightly on the boy's shoulder. "This is Noah," he said. "He'll be staying with us for a while." A while. That was the word adults used when they wanted children not to ask questions. A while became 1 week, then 1 semester, then every Christmas morning, every summer by the lake, every family photograph where Noah first stood at the edge, then closer to my father, then beside my mother, then beside me, until one day nobody remembered exactly when he had stopped being a guest. My parents never legally adopted him. They did not need to. In our family, belonging was often decided by routine before it was decided by paperwork. Noah had a bedroom in the East Wing, a place at the breakfast table, a Navy school blazer paid for by my father, a dentist, a tutor, a tennis coach, and my mother's hand against his forehead whenever he looked tired. To outsiders, he was the orphan boy the Hart family had generously helped. Inside our house, he became something far more intimate. He became the person who knew where I hid when the charity dinners grew too loud. He became the person who found me in the greenhouse after my first failed speech competition, and sat on the stone bench beside me without trying to fix my tears. He became the boy who remembered that I hated being called the Hart heiress by adults who smiled too widely at my parents and then spoke about me as if I were a future merger. When I was 13, I thought Noah understood me because he was kind. When I was 16, I thought he understood me because he was loyal. When I was 23, and he kissed me beneath the magnolia tree after my graduation dinner, I thought he understood me because he loved me. Now I know something much colder. Noah understood me because he had been studying me. That is not the same thing. He knew I hated confrontation. He knew I froze when my father went silent instead of angry. He knew my mother's disappointment could make me apologize even when I had done nothing wrong. He knew I trusted familiar hands, familiar rooms, familiar voices. He knew I had grown up inside a world where every decision came wrapped in advice, where every concern came dressed as protection, and where love often sounded like someone saying, "Let us handle this for you." So when Noah began handling things for me, I let him. At first, it was small. He would answer a difficult email because he knew I was exhausted. He would step into a tense meeting because he said stress made my migraines worse. He would remind my assistant to block off recovery time after long investor calls. He would order my dinner when I was too tired to choose, place a hand at the small of my back before I entered a room, and lean down to whisper, "I've got you." Those 3 words became a place I lived. I've got you. I heard them the night my father had his first minor heart scare, and Noah handled the hospital paperwork while I sat shaking in a plastic chair. I heard them the morning before our wedding, when I panicked in the bridal suite because the ceremony felt too large, too public, too full of people who cared more about the Hart name than my happiness. I heard them the day my father announced Noah would become managing director of Hartwell Group, because I was still learning the company from the inside, and Noah, my father said, had the steadiness needed to help carry the transition. He understands you. My mother told me that night, smoothing my hair like I was still a child. He has always looked after you. My father said something similar. One day, when your mother and I are no longer here, I need to know someone will stand beside you who knows this family, this company, and you. He looked at Noah with pride. I looked at Noah with trust, and Noah lowered his eyes with perfect humility, as if the weight of my family's faith had moved him deeply. "I'll never forget what you gave me," he told my parents. That sentence became part of our family mythology. My mother repeated it at anniversaries. My father repeated it when board members questioned whether Noah, with no heart blood, should hold so much authority. I repeated it to myself whenever a small unease stirred inside me, and I did not want to look at it closely. He is grateful. He is loyal. He is ours. By the time I married him, I had known him for most of my life. That fact became its own kind of blindness. People warned me that childhood love could be complicated, that growing up beside someone did not mean you truly knew the adult they had become, but I heard those warnings as jealousy, or cynicism, or the kind of bitterness people carry when they have never been loved by someone who remembers them before they learned to perform. Noah remembered me before I became Evelyn Hart, board member, only daughter, future chairwoman, carefully groomed successor to Hartwell Group. He remembered me as Eve, the girl who cried in the greenhouse, the girl who hated speeches, the girl who once asked him, at 14, if people only loved her because she was useful. He had answered then, very softly, "I don't." I built an entire life on that answer. When I became pregnant at 33, it felt like the final piece of a story that had been writing itself since childhood. Noah and I had been trying quietly for months. I had not told my mother because she would have turned hope into a schedule, and I had not told my father because he would have tried to pretend he was calm, while secretly planning college trusts for children who did not yet exist. So when the test showed 2 pink lines, I carried it into Noah's study with trembling hands. He was at his desk, reviewing an acquisition report, sleeves rolled to his elbows, dark hair falling slightly over his forehead in that way that still made him look like the boy who used to do homework at our kitchen island. He looked up. For 1 second, something unreadable moved across his face. Then he stood so quickly his chair rolled back into the shelves. "Eve," he whispered. I held up the test. His expression broke open into joy. At least, that is what I believed it was. He crossed the room, wrapped his arms around me carefully, and pressed his lips to my temple. "We did it," he said. "We really did it," I cried into his shirt. He held me as if I were precious. That is the hardest part to explain now. The memories did not feel fake while I was living them. His hands did not tremble with villainy. His voice did not sound like a man calculating my death. He laughed when I laughed. He kissed my forehead in the kitchen. He rested his palm against my stomach before there was anything to feel. He downloaded pregnancy apps. He read articles. He corrected my caffeine intake with a seriousness that made me roll my eyes and secretly feel adored. When the first ultrasound revealed twins, I thought his face went pale from wonder. The technician smiled at the screen and said, "There's one heartbeat, strong and clear, and here, there's another. Another." The word filled the room like light. Noah gripped my hand so tightly I almost laughed. "Twins?" he asked. "Twins?" The technician confirmed. I turned to him, expecting shock, maybe fear, maybe the helpless laughter that had overtaken me. Instead, Noah kissed my hand and whispered, "2 miracles." I believed him. That evening, my parents hosted dinner at the main house. My mother cried before the soup course. My father stood from his chair and came around the table to kiss the top of my head, something he had not done in years. "My girl," he said, his voice thick. "My brave girl." Then he turned to Noah. "Take care of her." Noah placed one hand on my shoulder. "With my life," he said. Nobody at that table knew how cruelly true that sentence would become. After the pregnancy announcement, Noah's care intensified. At least, that was what I called it then. He scheduled a private maternity specialist, saying the best was the least I deserved. He hired a driver because he didn't want me behind the wheel when nausea hit without warning. He asked my assistant to copy him on medical appointments. Because pregnancy brain was real, he said with a tender smile, and he did not want me carrying the mental load alone. He suggested I step back from operational meetings until the second trimester. He spoke to my father about a temporary delegation of voting authority, just in case I needed rest. Every step sounded reasonable. Every sentence was padded with concern. "You don't have to prove anything right now," Noah told me one night, kneeling in front of me as I sat on the edge of our bed, too tired even to remove my earrings. "You've carried this company your entire life, Eve. Let me carry it for a few months." I looked at him, at the boy my family had saved, the man I had loved, the husband touching my swollen ankles with such careful hands, and I felt ashamed for the tiny resistance that had risen in me. So I nodded. I let him carry it. That was how the cage was built. Not with locks, not with threats, not with one dramatic act of cruelty I could point to and say, "This is where love ended." It was built with calendars, specialists, signatures, drivers, filtered emails, softened voices, and the constant reassurance that I was loved too much to be burdened. By the time I noticed there were meetings I no longer attended, documents I no longer received directly, doctors who answered Noah before they answered me, and company decisions being made in rooms where people used to wait for my opinion, I was already pregnant, exhausted, emotional, and surrounded by people who told me how lucky I was to have a husband so devoted. So I smiled, I rested, I thanked him. And somewhere behind that devotion, Noah began preparing a future in which I would not exist. Part 2. The care that became control. By the end of my first trimester, Noah had become the person everyone looked at before they looked at me. At first, I thought that was love. He came to every scan, he remembered every appointment. He knew the name of every supplement, every blood test, every doctor's recommendation before I did. When nausea left me shaking over the bathroom sink, he held my hair back and warmed towels in the dryer. When my mother called too early, already planning nursery colors and specialist consultations, he answered softly and told her I was still sleeping. When my father asked whether I was ready for the next board review, Noah placed a hand on my shoulder and said, "Let her rest, I'll handle it." Everyone admired him for that. My mother called him devoted, my father called him steady. The staff at Hartwell called him a blessing, and I, who had trusted Noah since I was 11 years old, called it protection. That was the dangerous part. Noah never took anything from me all at once. He did it gently, in pieces small enough to look like help. The Monday executive meeting was moved earlier because, he said, my mornings were difficult and I should not be forced to sit under bright conference lights while fighting nausea. The board packets were shortened into summaries because, he said, I did not need every ugly scenario when I was carrying twins. My medical reports began arriving through his office first because, he said, he wanted to make sure nothing slipped through the cracks. Every change sounded reasonable. Every concern was wrapped in tenderness. And every week, I became a little less necessary in the rooms that had once waited for my voice. The first person to hesitate was Lena, my assistant. She came into my office one afternoon with a tablet pressed against her chest. I was sitting on the sofa, too tired to sit at my desk, one hand resting on my stomach. "Evelyn," she said carefully, "Mr. Vale asked me to send the revised restructuring file through his office before it comes to you. He said you approved the new process." I looked up, confused. "I probably did," I said, though I could not remember doing it. There have been so many changes lately. Lena did not move right away. I just wanted to confirm with you. Something about her face made me uneasy. Not because I suspected Noah. I did not. I suspected myself. Pregnancy had made me tired, forgetful, easier to overwhelm. Noah had warned me that would happen, so I gave Lena a small smile. If Noah said it, it's fine. She nodded, but the worry did not leave her eyes. That evening, we had dinner at my parents' house. My mother watched every bite I took. My father pretended not to notice how pale I looked. Noah sat beside me, calm and attentive, answering questions before I had to. When my father raised his glass, he said, "To Evelyn and to the twins, and to Noah, for carrying so much while she carries the future of this family." The future of this family. That phrase settled over the table like silk and chain at the same time. Noah lowered his eyes in that perfect, humble way of his. "I'm only doing what any husband would do," he said. My mother reached across the table and touched his hand. "No," she said warmly, "not any husband. You." I watched them look at him, and I understood how complete his place in our family had become. Noah was not just my husband. He was the boy my parents had saved. The son they never officially adopted but emotionally claimed. The man my father had placed inside Hartwell because he believed gratitude could become loyalty. That night, after we came home, I found Noah standing in the doorway of the nursery. The room was still half office, half dream. 2 unopened cribs leaned against the wall. A soft rug was still wrapped in plastic. Noah stood there with his hands in his pockets, looking into the empty space as if he were seeing something already finished. "What are you thinking?" I asked. He did not answer immediately. Then he said, "I'm thinking everything is finally falling into place." I wanted that sentence to comfort me. Instead, something cold moved through my chest. A week later, I heard Clara Moss's name in a way that stayed with me. She was a young analyst in Hartwell's corporate development division, sharp, polished, and recently moved onto Noah's strategy team. I had met her only twice, both times outside the boardroom, where she stood with a laptop against her hip and the alert expression of someone trying very hard not to be underestimated. Noah mentioned her over breakfast. "Clara caught a mistake in the Westbridge acquisition model," he said, scrolling through his phone. "Smart catch. Saved us from an embarrassing correction." "That's good," I said. "She reminds me of you at that age." I smiled faintly. I was not that polished. "No," he said, still looking at the screen. "You were softer." The word touched something in me. Softer. Not younger, not less experienced, softer. But before I could ask what he meant, he kissed the top of my head and left for an early call. After that, Clara's name appeared more often. Clara prepared the memo. Clara stayed late to revise the model. Clara understood risk. Clara moved quickly and quietly. Clara was useful. One evening I tried to joke. "You sound impressed." Noah looked at me, smiled, and placed his hand over my stomach. "I am," he said. "Good people are rare, but no one is you, no one is you." The words soothed me faster than I wanted to admit. That was one of Noah's gifts. He knew exactly how much reassurance to give me, just enough to make me ashamed of needing more. When I tried to return to the full board schedule in my second trimester, everyone gently stopped me. Noah said I needed rest. My mother said the babies came first. My father said Hartwell would still be there after the birth. Even the doctor Noah had chosen said stress was dangerous and that delegating was wise. Everyone agreed around me until my own resistance began to sound unreasonable, even to myself. Then one morning, I tried to open the full restructuring folder and found my access denied. I called it T. The technician sounded nervous. "Mrs. Vale, Mr. Vale requested a temporary permissions adjustment for medical continuity planning." "Mr. Vale requested it?" I asked. "Yes, through his office." His office, not mine. A silence opened inside me. Noah walked in before I could say anything else. He saw my face, then softened his own instantly. "Eve," he said, "what happened? Why can't I access the restructuring folder?" He sighed, not guilty, only tired. "I meant to tell you. There are aggressive worst-case models in there. Legal thought it might worry you unnecessarily, so I asked them to send you the summary first. You removed my access. Temporarily, he said. Only because I know you. If you read every possible disaster, you won't sleep. I'm still on the board, Noah. And you're still my wife, he said quietly. You're pregnant with twins. I will not apologize for protecting you from stress. It sounded reasonable. That was the most dangerous thing about Noah. His control never arrived as control. It arrived as concern, wearing the face I had trusted since childhood. I wanted to argue, but dizziness rose suddenly, blurring the edge of the room. Noah caught my elbow before I reached for the desk. See, he whispered, you need to rest. And because he was holding me upright, I forgot for a moment that he was also the reason the floor had moved beneath me. The next morning, he brought me a 3-page summary. Soft language, clean numbers, no sharp edges. I signed the acknowledgement because his hand rested over mine, warm and steady, and because I still believed the man guiding my pen would never lead me anywhere dangerous. I did not know the folder I could not access contained the first draft of a contingency plan. I did not know my medical records were being copied into a separate file. And I did not know Clara Moss, the brilliant young analyst Noah said reminded him of me, was already pregnant. Not with twins, with Noah's son. Part 3. The door that was left half open. The appointment at Marrow Clinic was supposed to be routine. That was what Noah told me in the car while the driver carried us through a quiet stretch of old money streets. Past hedges trimmed like geometry and houses set so far back from the road they looked less lived in than guarded. He sat beside me in the back seat, one hand resting over mine, his thumb moving gently across my knuckles. Just extended screening, he said. Nothing dramatic, doctor. Calloway is thorough, that's all. I looked out the window and tried to ignore the tightness in my chest. The twins had been active that morning, little flutters like secrets under my ribs. I was finally beginning to feel more like myself again, which meant I was also beginning to notice things I had been too tired to question. The missing files, the summarized reports, the way doctors looked at Noah before answering me, the way every concern I raised was met with a smile and the same soft sentence. You need rest, Eve. At the clinic, everything smelled like money and antiseptic. The walls were cream, the lighting gentle, the magazines current. A receptionist greeted Noah by name before she greeted me. That was the first thing I noticed. The second was Dr. Adrian Calloway's face. He was one of those men who had built an entire career on making dangerous information sound manageable. Silver hair, calm hands, voice low enough to be trusted. Yet when he entered the consultation room, his smile arrived half a second late. Noah saw it too. I felt his fingers tighten around mine. The scan was quiet, too quiet. Dr. Calloway moved the probe over my stomach, narrating the safe details. Twin A strong, twin B active, heartbeats good, growth appropriate, placental position acceptable. Acceptable, not perfect, not wonderful, acceptable. What does that mean? I asked. It means, Noah said before the doctor could answer, that they're doing well. Dr. Calloway glanced at him, then at me. Yes, he said, they're doing well. The appointment ended with instructions to rest, hydrate, avoid stress, and continue the supplements Noah had already arranged. Then Dr. Calloway asked if I would mind waiting outside for a moment while he reviewed a few administrative details with Noah. Billing, Noah said lightly. Insurance codes, Dr. Calloway added. I should have refused. I was the patient. It was my body, my children, my life. But I had been trained by love, or what I thought was love, to make space for Noah's competence. So I smiled, gathered my coat, and stepped into the hallway. I was halfway to the restroom when I realized I had left my phone on the consultation chair. It was such a small mistake. A phone forgotten on a chair, a door left half open, a life saved by an accident. When I turned back, I heard Noah's voice before I reached the room. It was low, stripped of warmth. The voice he used in negotiations when the person across from him had something he wanted. In plain terms, Adrian, what happens if we do nothing? I stopped. Dr. Calloway answered after a pause. The twins carry a paired marker that is harmless to them, but dangerous to Evelyn during the later stages of pregnancy. It may trigger an immune cascade, organ inflammation, clotting events, stroke risk. The danger increases sharply near delivery. The hallway seemed to tilt. My hand went to my stomach. And the treatment? Noah asked. There is a targeted infusion protocol. It's new, expensive, but highly effective if started soon. It would significantly reduce maternal risk. Maternal risk, not discomfort, not complication, risk. How much? Noah asked. Another pause. About $2 million for the full course. Silence. I waited for my husband to say yes. I waited for the boy my family had saved to say, start immediately. I waited for the man who had promised my father he would care for me with his life to ask how quickly they could begin. Instead, Noah exhaled. That is not practical. Dr. Calloway's voice sharpened. Mr. Vale, with respect, this is not cosmetic. Without intervention, your wife could die. My wife could die. The words entered me cleanly with no mercy. Noah did not break. He did not ask if I was afraid. He did not ask if the babies would survive without me. He did not even whisper my name. He said, "Don't tell Evelyn." For a moment, I heard nothing except the sound of my own pulse. Then Dr. Calloway said, "I have an ethical duty to my patient, and I have a duty to protect her from panic." Noah replied, "She is emotionally fragile right now. You saw how pale she looked. That is not the issue. It is exactly the issue," Noah said, colder now. "If she knows she will spiral, she will stop trusting the pregnancy. She will stop trusting me. She may make irrational decisions about the company, about the birth, about everything. The treatment could save her life. The treatment could fail," Noah said, "and $2 million is not a small expense for an experimental protocol." I almost laughed, not because anything was funny, but because the absurdity was so violent, it cracked something inside me. Hartwell Group could spend $2 million repainting offices nobody used. My father had once paid more than that to settle a vineyard dispute because my mother liked the view. Noah was not worried about money. He was weighing my life against his plan. Then Dr. Calloway said the thing that made the hallway go silent inside me. There are corporate documents attached to her medical proxy that concern me. If something happens to Evelyn during delivery, Mr. Vale, your authority over her voting shares becomes immediate. Noah did not answer quickly. When he did, his voice was almost gentle. That is why stability matters. I pressed my palm over my mouth, he continued. Evelyn is an only child. Richard is recovering. Margaret cannot run Hartwell. If Evelyn panics and starts changing documents now, she could destabilize the company at the worst possible moment. I am protecting the family. No, Dr. Calloway said quietly. You are protecting your access to it. Silence. Then Noah spoke the sentence that would divide my life into before and after. If she dies during delivery, Hartwell becomes mine anyway. My body went cold, not chilled, cold. Like something living had been removed from me and replaced with glass. Dr. Calloway whispered, "And Clara?" Noah sighed, annoyed now. "Clara knows nothing about this. She believes Evelyn and I are already separated emotionally. She believes I'll marry her after the twins are born and the transition is handled. She's pregnant. With a son," Noah said, "which simplifies the public story. The public story, my death, my children, his mistress, her baby, my family's company. All of it was a story to him, a structure, a transition, something to handle." I stepped backward before my legs failed me. One slow step, then another. I did not get my phone. I did not make a sound. I walked down the hallway with my hand on the wall, smiling at a nurse who passed me, because some ancient part of me understood that if Noah knew I had heard him, I might never make it home safely. In the restroom, I locked myself in a stall and bent over my stomach. The twins fluttered, alive, trusting me. I did not cry, not yet. Crying belonged to a version of me who still had the luxury of being only betrayed. I was not only betrayed, I was in danger. My children were in danger. My family was in danger. And Noah Vale, the orphan boy my parents had brought into our home, had just mistaken my love for blindness one time too many. When I finally looked at myself in the mirror, my face was pale, but my eyes were different. I was still shaking when I whispered, "Okay, not to God, not to Noah, to my daughters. Mommy knows now." Then I opened the restroom door and walked back toward my husband with the soft, tired smile of a woman who had no idea. She had just overheard her own murder being discussed like a business decision. When I walked back into the consultation room, Noah was standing by the window with my phone in his hand. For 1 second, my entire body forgot how to breathe. He turned when he heard the door, and the expression on his face changed so quickly that I almost missed it. Calculation vanished, concern arrived. The man behind the door disappeared, and my husband stepped back into his skin. "You left this," he said, holding up my phone with a soft smile. "Pregnancy brain," I laughed. It sounded thin to me, but apparently it was enough. "Sorry," I said. I got turned around. Dr. Calloway would not look at me. He stood behind his desk, one hand resting on a folder, his face pale beneath the expensive clinic lighting. I looked at him only long enough to see fear in his eyes. Good, I thought, let him be afraid. Noah crossed the room and placed my phone into my palm. His fingers brushed mine. For most of my life, that touch had meant safety. Now it felt like a signature at the bottom of a death warrant. "All set?" I asked. Noah kissed my temple. "All set, nothing for you to worry about." Nothing for me to worry about. I smiled again. That was the first lie I ever told him with my whole face. The drive home was quiet. Noah answered emails beside me while I watched the cities pass through tinted glass. Every familiar street looked slightly wrong now, as if someone had shifted the world while I was not looking. His shoulder brushed mine whenever the car turned. His wedding ring caught the light. His phone buzzed twice, and both times he angled the screen away from me. Before that day, I would have pretended not to notice. Now I noticed everything. At home, he helped me out of the car and guided me inside with one hand at my back. "You should lie down," he said. "That appointment tired you out." "Yes," I whispered. "I think it did." In our bedroom, he removed my shoes as if I were something precious. He brought me water. He adjusted the curtains. He tucked a blanket around my legs. Every gesture was so practiced, so tender, that a part of me wanted to scream. Not because he had stopped printing, but because he had not. That was the cruelty. Noah still knew exactly how to look like love. When he finally left for a call, I waited until his footsteps faded down the hall. Then I sat up slowly, locked the bedroom door, and opened my laptop with shaking hands. The first document I created was not named Revenge. It was not named Noah. It was named Delivery Plan. I needed something boring, something harmless, something a pregnant woman would reasonably keep on her computer if anyone ever looked. Inside it, I wrote everything I had heard. The genetic marker, the immune cascade, the treatment, $2 million. Don't tell Evelyn. If she dies during delivery, Hartwell becomes mine anyway. Clara knows nothing, with a son, the public story. I typed until my fingers cramped. I wrote the time, the room number, the doctor's name, the exact sequence of sentences as close as memory allowed. Then I saved the file inside a hidden folder, uploaded a copy to a private cloud account Noah did not know existed, and sent another copy to an email address I created under a name my grandmother used in old family letters. Then I did the first truly disloyal thing I had ever done in my marriage. I called a doctor without asking my husband. Her name was Dr. Miriam Shaw. She had delivered the children of 2 women I knew from university, and more importantly, she had no relationship with Hartwell, Noah, my father, or the clinic. Her assistant answered, and when I said I was pregnant with twins and needed an urgent second opinion, something in my voice must have translated itself correctly. They gave me an appointment for the next morning. After that, I called Lena. She answered on the second ring. "Evelyn?" There was caution in her voice. I lowered mine. "Are you alone?" A pause. "Yes, I need you to do something for me. And you cannot put it on the company calendar." The silence that followed was not confusion. It was relief. "I'm listening," she said. I asked her to quietly export my access logs, board packet changes, and every permission adjustment made in the last 3 months. I asked for copies of the restructuring folder, if she could legally access them through her administrative archive. I asked whether anyone had requested changes to my medical proxy documents through the corporate legal office. Lena did not ask why. That told me she already had suspicions of her own. "I'll gather what I can," she said. "But Evelyn, are you safe?" The question nearly broke me. I looked at the locked bedroom door. "No," I said softly. "But he doesn't know I know that yet." That night I played the role Noah expected. I came downstairs in a loose cream sweater, one hand on my stomach, moving carefully as if the appointment had drained me. Noah was in the kitchen, speaking to someone on his phone. His voice changed when he saw me. "I'll call you back," he said, ending the call. "Business?" I asked. "Always." He slipped the phone into his pocket. "How do you feel?" "Tired." He looked satisfied by that. Not pleased exactly. Satisfied. As if my exhaustion confirmed the story he was building. So I leaned into it. I let him help me to the table. I let him choose soup because it would be easier on my stomach. I let him tell me which emails could wait. I let him speak about Hartwell's restructuring as if it were a storm outside the windows, and not a machine being assembled around my absence. "You trust me, don't you?" he asked later, when we were sitting in the dim blue light of the living room. I turned my face toward him. That question would have hurt less if he had shouted. "Yes," I said. He touched my cheek with the back of his fingers. "Good. I need you calm right now, for the babies, for the babies." He used them like a hymn. I placed my hand over my stomach and smiled. "For the babies," I repeated. The next morning, I told Noah I wanted to visit my mother. I said I felt emotional after the appointment and needed a quiet day at the main house. He approved instantly. Of course he did. My parents' house was the safest cage he knew, because every wall there still believed he was family. But I did not go to my mother first. I went to Dr. Shaw. Her office was smaller than Marrow Clinic. No marble, no private concierge, no receptionist who knew Noah's name. Just clean chairs, warm light, and a doctor who looked at me before she looked at anyone else. That alone almost made me cry. I handed her everything I had. The clinic report Noah had allowed me to see, my lab results, the ultrasound notes, the supplement list, and my written account of what I had overheard. She read in silence, her expression changing only once. When she looked up, the room felt colder. "Evelyn," she said carefully, "I can't verify the conversation without records. But based on these markers, I agree there is a serious maternal risk that needs further testing immediately." My hand closed around the edge of the chair. "And if there is a treatment? Then you should have been told." Those 6 words were the first clean thing anyone had said to me in weeks. I breathed in, it hurt. Dr. Shaw continued, "I want you transferred out of Marrow's care today. I also want you to revoke any medical authorization that allows your husband to receive information before you do. Before you do. Not instead of you. Before you do." The distinction felt like a door opening. By noon, I had signed new forms. By 2, Dr. Shaw had ordered independent testing. By 4, Lena sent me the first encrypted file. It contained access changes, folder restrictions, legal routing notes, and one message from Noah's office to corporate counsel. Subject line: contingency authority in event of maternal incapacity. Maternal incapacity. Not health planning. Not family protection. Maternal incapacity. I stared at those words until they stopped being words and became a map. Noah had built a path toward my disappearance. Now finally I had found the first stone. I did not tell my parents that night. That may sound cruel, but I needed 24 hours to become someone who could survive their faces when they learned the truth. My father's silence would break me if I was not ready. My mother's grief would pull me under if I stepped into it too soon. So I waited. I let Noah believe I had spent the day at the main house. I let him kiss my forehead when he came home late, smelling faintly of rain and a cologne that was not mine. I let him ask if my mother had fussed too much, and I even managed a tired little smile when he said, "You know she only does it because she loves you." Love. That word had started to feel like a room where something was rotting behind the walls. The next morning, I asked my parents to meet me in the old library, not the formal sitting room, where guests were entertained and bad news was politely folded into small talk. Not the dining room, where Noah's place still sat near my father's right hand. The library, the room where decisions were made before they became announcements. My father arrived first, leaning slightly on his cane, though he hated needing it. Richard Hart had built Hartwell Group from a regional logistics company into an international supply chain empire, and even at 71, recovering from a heart procedure, he still carried himself like a man people instinctively moved aside for. My mother came in behind him, elegant as always in soft gray cashmere, her pearl earrings trembling slightly when she saw my face. "Evelyn," she asked, "what happened?" I closed the door, then I locked it. That was when my father straightened. I placed the printed files on the table one by one. My written record from the clinic, the independent medical notes from Dr. Ah, the access logs from Lena, the message about contingency authority in the event of maternal incapacity, the copy of my medical proxy changes, the list of files Noah had blocked from me. My mother stared at the papers as if they were written in a language she had once known but no longer wanted to understand. My father did not touch them. "Tell me," he said. So I did. I told them about the clinic, about the door left half open, about the treatment, about the cost, about Noah saying it was not practical, about Dr. Calloway warning him I could die, about Noah telling him not to tell me, about Hartwell becoming his if I died during delivery. I did not soften anything I could not afford to. When I said Clara's name, my mother put one hand on the back of a chair. "She knows?" my father asked. "No," I said. "I don't think she knows the real plan. She's pregnant." Noah said it was a son. The room went so quiet I could hear the old clock ticking behind my father's desk. My mother sat down slowly. "No," she whispered, "not Noah." There it was. Not disbelief in me. Disbelief in the boy she had fed, the boy whose fever she had stayed up through, the boy whose first good suit she had chosen, the boy she had kissed on the cheek at our wedding and called her second child. My father finally reached for the top page. His hand did not shake, but something in his face aged all at once. How long did he know? The question was soft. That made it worse. "Long enough to choose," I said. My mother made a sound then, small and wounded, like air leaving a cracked glass. My father sat down. For a few seconds, he was not the head of Hartwell Group. He was only an old man looking at proof that the child he had rescued had become the man who endangered his daughter. "I brought him home," he said. No one answered. "I brought him into this house." "Dad," I whispered. He raised one hand, not to silence me cruelly, but because he could not bear comfort yet. "I taught him how to read a balance sheet before I taught you how to say no to him." That sentence broke something open in all of us. My mother covered her mouth. I went to my father and knelt beside his chair, carefully, one hand over my stomach. For the first time in my life, he looked afraid to touch me. "I believed him too," I said. "That's why it worked." My mother began to cry then, not loudly. My mother never cried loudly. Her grief came in controlled little breaths, each one more painful because of the effort it took to contain. "I told you he was safe," she said. "I told you he would never hurt you because he knew what it meant to be abandoned." I took her hand. "Mom." She shook her head, looking not at me, but toward the hallway, toward the house that had raised him. I was wrong. I loved the child so much I refused to see the man. For a while, nobody spoke. Then my father changed. It was almost physical. The guilt did not leave his face, but something harder rose beneath it. The Richard Hart who had negotiated strikes, hostile bids, supplier collapses, and boardroom betrayals returned slowly, not replacing the father, but standing beside him. "What have you already done?" he asked. I told him about Dr. Shah, about the revoked medical authorizations, about Lena's help, about the hidden copies. He nodded once. "Good," my mother wiped her face. "We move you here tonight." "No," I said. Both of them looked at me. The old Evelyn would have softened immediately, apologizing for sounding too sharp. But the old Evelyn had been trained to be manageable. I could not afford that anymore. "No," I repeated. "If I vanish from the house, Noah will know. If he knows, he will move faster. I need him comfortable. I need him arrogant." My father studied me. For the first time in days, I saw pride cut through his grief. "She's right," he said. My mother looked horrified. "You want her to go back to him?" "I want her alive," my father said. "And if Noah thinks he has already won, that may give us the time we need." Us, that word steadied me. For the first time since the clinic, I did not feel alone. We made a plan in the library while the house moved quietly around us. My father would contact an outside legal firm, not Hartwell Counsel, not anyone Noah had ever used. My mother would arrange private security, but the guards would report to me, not to Noah and not even to her. Dr. Shah would receive every medical record directly. Lena would continue gathering access changes and board documents. My father would quietly freeze any expansion of Noah's signing authority until the Next board vote. No dramatic confrontation. Not yet. No shouting. No accusations. Just doors closing one by one. Before I left, my mother followed me into the hallway. For a moment, she only looked at me, her eyes red. Her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles had gone white. Then she asked the question Noah never did. "What do you need from me?" I almost cried. Not because she offered help, because she asked. I leaned into her arms carefully, and she held me with a tenderness that did not demand obedience. "I need you to trust me," I whispered. She kissed my hair. "I do." When I returned home that evening, Noah was waiting in the nursery doorway again. He smiled when he saw me. "How was your mother?" I walked toward him slowly, one hand over the twins, wearing the tired softness he expected. "She cried," I said. His face tightened for half a second. "About what?" "Everything," I said. "The babies. Dad's health. Me growing up. You know, Mom." He relaxed. "Yes," he said. "I know, Margaret." No, I thought, looking at the man my mother had once loved like a son. You knew how to use her. That was not the same thing. Finding Clara Moss was easier than I expected. Understanding what to do with her was harder. For 2 days after I told my parents, I lived inside two realities. In one, I was Noah's tired, pregnant wife, moving softly through our house, letting him bring me tea, letting him kiss my forehead, letting him believe every locked door he had built around me was still holding. In the other, I was building a file thick enough to bury him. Lena sent more documents. My father's outside lawyer confirmed that several temporary authorizations Noah had pushed through were not harmless at all, Doctor. Shaw's independent tests confirmed enough risk that immediate treatment was recommended. My mother had security placed discreetly near our house, under the excuse of general family precautions after my father's health scare. And Clara kept appearing in the evidence like a shadow. Her apartment lease was paid through a consulting account connected to Hartwell. Her prenatal appointments had been arranged through a private service Noah used. There were late-night rides from our corporate car system to her building, calendar blocks under initials, and one encrypted message Lena found attached to a draft communication plan. In the event of unexpected maternal loss, public messaging must emphasize continuity, family unity, and renewed purpose. Renewed purpose. I stared at those words for a long time. Then I asked Lena for Clara's personal number. I did not text from my own phone. I used a prepaid one my father's lawyer had given me. My message was simple. "Clara, this is Evelyn Hart. I know about you and Noah. I also know there are things he has not told you. Meet me tomorrow at 10 a.m. at the Ridgemont Hotel Tier Room. Come alone if you want to protect yourself and your child." She did not answer for 3 hours. Then one line appeared. "I'll come." The next morning, I told Noah I had a prenatal therapy session. He approved of that too quickly, which meant he liked the idea of me being emotionally managed by someone. I kissed his cheek before I left. His skin felt warm, human. That bothered me more than it should have. Clara was already seated when I arrived. She looked younger outside the office, softer than the polished analyst I had seen in glass corridors. She wore a navy coat over a cream dress, and one hand rested protectively over a stomach not yet obvious unless you knew to look. Her face was pale, but her chin was lifted. She expected humiliation. That much was clear. I sat across from her. For a moment neither of us spoke. Then she said, "Noah told me your marriage has been over for a long time." Her voice trembled only slightly. I looked at her and felt something strange. Not forgiveness, not pity exactly. Recognition, maybe. She was sitting where I had sat for years, inside a story Noah had written for her, mistaking his fluency for truth. "What else did he tell you?" I asked. She swallowed. "That you and he were only together because of the company. That your parents controlled everything. That you looked down on him for being taken in by your family. That he felt trapped." There it was. The poor orphan boy again. The story that made every theft sound like justice. I opened my folder and placed the first document on the table. "Did he tell you I might die giving birth?" Clara went still. "What? Did he tell you there is a treatment that could reduce that risk? And that he asked the doctor not to tell me?" Her eyes flicked down to the page. "That's not true." I placed the second document beside the first. "Did he tell you that if I die, my voting shares can transfer into his authority under a proxy structure he helped arrange while I was pregnant and..." Exhausted? Her breathing changed. Stop. I did not stop. Did he tell you that your son makes the public story cleaner? At that, all color left her face. My son? I looked at her stomach, then back at her. Yes, his word, not mine. He said a son simplifies the story. Clara's hand tightened over her abdomen. For the first time, the fear in her face was not of me. Good. I pushed the final page toward her. It was the line from the communication draft. In the event of unexpected maternal loss, she read it once, then again. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. I thought. She stopped, pressing her fingers against her mouth. He said you knew. He said you and he had an arrangement. He said after the babies were born, he would make things public. He said he only stayed because your family would destroy him if he left too soon. He told me you were just useful, I said quietly. She flinched. I let the silence sit between us. Then I said the truth I had come to say. I don't forgive you for sleeping with my husband, Clara. Her eyes filled. I know. But I do not believe you agreed to help him bury me. The tear that slipped down her cheek seemed to frighten her. She wiped it away quickly, almost angrily. No, she whispered. I didn't know. I believed her. Not because I wanted to. Because the shock in her face was too ugly to be performed. She looked down at the documents again. He said you were cold, she said. He said you never saw him as equal. He said your father treated him like a charity case in a suit. My father gave him a home, an education, a career, and eventually the company keys, I said. Noah was never trapped in my family. He was sheltered by it. Clara closed her eyes. I'm so stupid. No, I said, you were useful to him. There is a difference. She opened her eyes then, and something in them sharpened. What do you want from me? There it was. Not apology. Not drama. Usefulness turned in a new direction. I want the truth, I said. Every message. Every promise. Every recording if you have one. Every time he mentioned me, the company, my parents, your baby, or after the birth. She looked toward the tea room window, where rain was beginning to streak the glass. If I help you, he'll hate me. He already does, I said gently. He just hasn't needed you to know that yet. That landed. I saw it land. Clara sat back as if the chair had moved beneath her. For a long moment, she looked very young. Then she reached into her handbag and took out her phone. There are messages, she said. A lot of them. He uses a private app, but I saved screenshots when he started changing his story. Why? She gave a small humorless laugh. Because part of me knew men who tell too many stories eventually forget which one they gave you. For the first time, I almost smiled. Clara scrolled, then turned the phone toward me. The first message was from Noah. After delivery, everything changes. I'll finally be free to build the life we were meant to have. The second, Evelyn won't be able to fight the transition. Her parents will listen to me by then. The third, our son deserves the Hartwell future without the Hart family looking over my shoulder. I read that one twice, our son. The Hartwell future, without the Hart family. My hand stayed still. That was how I knew the old Evelyn was gone. Clara watched my face. What happens now? She asked. I looked at her across the polished table, at the woman I had wanted to hate because hatred would have been simpler than this. Now, I said, we let Noah believe both of us still belong to him. Her mouth tightened. And then we take away everything he thought he had secured. Clara nodded slowly. Not friendship, not forgiveness. A pact. By the time we left the tea room, the rain had stopped. Clara walked out first, shoulders stiff, one hand over her child. I waited 3 minutes before following. In the car, I opened the secure folder and uploaded the screenshots she had sent. Noah had spent years teaching me to rely on him. He had forgotten I grew up watching him too. And now, for the first time, someone else he had lied to was watching with me. The board meeting was scheduled for Thursday at 10 in the morning, and Noah believed, with the quiet confidence of a man who had mistaken access for ownership, that it would be the day Hartwell became his in every way that mattered, even if my family name still remained etched into the glass doors. For 3 days before that meeting, he moved through our house with a calmness that almost looked like happiness. He was not careless, because Noah had never been careless in his life. But there was a looseness in his shoulders, a private satisfaction in the way he hummed while making coffee, checked his phone with his back half turned, and kissed my forehead with the distracted tenderness of a man already looking beyond the room he was standing in. He thought I was tired enough to stay home. He thought my parents were frightened enough to follow his lead. He thought Clara was waiting quietly in the place he had assigned her, and he thought every woman in his life remained exactly where he had placed her, softened by love, pregnancy, shame, or habit. On Wednesday night, he sat beside me in bed with a stack of documents resting on his lap, turning one page after another with the bored efficiency of a man reviewing something that had already been decided. "Tomorrow may feel a little formal," he said, his voice gentle enough to pass for consideration. "There are some temporary continuity measures the board needs to approve while you focus on the twins. Mostly procedural, nothing you need to carry." I looked up from the pale yellow baby blanket my mother had brought over earlier that afternoon, soft enough that touching it made my throat ache, and asked him what kind of procedures he meant. "For Hartwell," he said, without looking away from the page. "Your father understands that we need stability right now. Everyone does." That was a lie. My father had agreed to nothing. But Noah did not know that the man who had once called him the best decision he ever made had spent the last 48 hours with an outside legal team removing Noah's authority line by line, signature by signature, door by door. "And I don't need to be there?" I asked, folding the blanket slowly so my hands would not betray me. Noah finally looked at me, and his smile was so tender that, years ago, it would have quieted every question in my body. "You can be there if you want," he said. "But honestly, Eve, it will be long, technical, and unnecessarily stressful, and I would rather you rest." There it was again, the velvet rope he had been lowering around my life for months, soft enough that no one called it a barrier until they were already standing on the wrong side of it. "Maybe I'll stay home," I said. Relief moved across his face so quickly that he could not hide all of it, and when he reached over to touch my cheek, I leaned into his hand one last time, not because I still believed in the warmth there, but because I wanted him to leave the room convinced that I did. The next morning, I dressed with more care than I had given any outfit since learning I was pregnant. I did not choose one of the loose pale dresses Noah preferred, the kind that made me look gentle, domestic, and safely breakable. Instead, I wore a cream suit that had been tailored before the pregnancy, and altered overnight by my mother's seamstress, so it framed my changing body instead of hiding it. My stomach was visible, so was my spine. Lena arrived at 8 with the final binder, her face pale but steady. My father's outside lawyer arrived at 8:30 with 2 associates and a locked case of documents. My mother came at 9 without flowers, vitamins, or anxious instructions, carrying only a black leather folder, and the kind of silence that meant she had chosen a side and would not be moved from it again. At 9:40, Clara texted me, "I'm here." I read the message once, placed one hand over the twins, and said, "Let's go." Hartwell's boardroom sat on the top floor behind glass doors etched with my grandfather's name, and for most of my childhood, I had thought of that room as something distant and almost sacred. A place where men in dark suits decided the future while women remembered. Birthdays, sent flowers, and made sure dinner began on time. Then my father put me inside it. Then Noah tried to remove me from it. Now I was walking back in with the quiet certainty of a woman who had finally understood that a seat at the table is not protected by gratitude, marriage, or family mythology, but by the willingness to claim it when someone tries to slide it away. When the doors opened, Noah was already standing at the head of the table, with my father seated on one side, my mother beside him, and the board members murmuring among themselves beneath the soft glow of the screen behind him. The title slide read, "Continuity Proposal, Maternal Leave Governance Structure, Maternal Leave." Not hostile transfer, not a power grab, not the legal architecture of my planned disappearance. Just maternal leave, wrapped in polished language and projected in elegant type. Noah saw me and went still for only a second before he smiled. "Eve," he said warmly. "You came?" "I did," I answered, and I watched his eyes move from my suit to the folder in my hand, then to my father's unreadable face, where something in Noah began recalculating too late. "Of course," he said, recovering smoothly. "We're just getting started." "Yes," I said, taking the empty chair beside my father, the one Noah had not expected me to fill. "I know." He began his presentation with all the grace that had once made people trust him. He spoke about stability, health, sensitivity, family transition, and the need to protect Hartwell from uncertainty while I focused on the babies. He described temporary authority expansions, medical leave voting structures, and emergency continuity clauses in such a calm, polished voice that if I had not known what lived beneath those words, I might have mistaken them for care. Then he said, "Everything proposed here is designed to protect Evelyn." My father's hand tightened once on the table, and I stood before Noah could move to the next slide. "Actually," I said, letting my voice stay quiet enough that everyone leaned in to hear it, "I would like to discuss what Noah means when he uses the word protect." The room shifted in that subtle way expensive rooms do when danger enters. Politely, board members glanced at one another. Noah's smile thinned, but he kept it on his face. "Eve," he said softly, with the warning tucked inside tenderness, "maybe we should take a short break." "No," I said. "I have taken enough breaks while decisions about my body, my children, my shares, and my future were made without me." The silence that followed was not loud, but it was complete. I opened my folder and placed the first document on the table. This is an independent medical opinion from Dr. Miriam Shah, confirming that my pregnancy carries a serious maternal risk that requires immediate treatment. A murmur moved through the room, and I placed the second page beside it. This is a note from Marrow Clinic, showing that the same risk had already been identified earlier. Noah's face changed only a little, but I had known him since childhood, so a little was enough. "This," I continued, setting down the third page, "is the treatment recommendation that was never given to me, although my husband was told about it." My mother closed her eyes, and for 1 second I felt the grief in her body, as if it had crossed the table and entered mine. But I kept going, because stopping now would only protect the man who had counted on my softness. Noah declined to inform me. He declined to begin treatment. He allowed my doctors, my company, and my family to believe I was tired, emotional, overwhelmed, and in need of rest, while he prepared legal and corporate structures that would become active if I became incapacitated during delivery. Noah stepped forward. "That is a gross distortion," he said. My father spoke for the first time, and his voice was low enough to make the room colder. "Sit down, Noah." Noah turned toward him. "Richard, sit down." Slowly Noah sat. I placed the next document on the table. "This is a message from Noah's office to corporate counsel regarding contingency authority in the event of maternal incapacity." I let the phrase rest in the room, because some words do not need to be explained if decent people are forced to hear them clearly. Maternal incapacity. Then I placed the access logs beside it. These are the restrictions placed on my board files, restructuring documents, and voting materials while I was being told that my only responsibility was to stay calm. Noah's voice sharpened. "For your health." I turned to him. "No, Noah, for your access." The doors opened then, and Clara Moss walked in with one hand resting over her stomach. Every head turned. Noah stood so quickly. His chair struck the wall behind him, and for the first time that morning, the performance cracked wide enough for everyone to see fear. "Clara," he said. She did not answer him. She walked to the end of the table, pale but steady, and placed her phone beside my documents. "My name is Clara Moss," she said. "I am pregnant with Noah Vale's child. He told me his marriage to Evelyn was over. He told me the Hart family had trapped him. He told me that after the twins were born, everything would change." Noah's voice broke around her name. "Clara, stop." She looked at him then, and there was no romance left in her face. "You should have stopped before you used my son in your plan." The room became perfectly still. Clara tapped her phone, and the screenshots Lena had prepared appeared on the boardroom screen. "After delivery, everything changes. Evelyn won't be able to fight the transition. Our son deserves the Hartwell future without the Hart family looking over my shoulder." No one spoke. Noah stared at the screen as if the words had betrayed him by becoming visible. Then my mother stood. For most of my life, Margaret Hart had been elegance and restraint, soft power wrapped in pearls and perfect posture. But that morning, when she looked at Noah, there was nothing soft left in her. "I loved you like a son," she said. "That is what makes this unforgivable." Noah opened his mouth. Margaret. Do not call me that, she said, and the quietness of it was more final than shouting could ever have been. My father rose next, looking older than he had the week before but larger too, as if grief had burned away every unnecessary part of him, and left only the man who had built Hartwell with his own hands. I gave you a room in my house, he said. I gave you an education, a career, my trust, and my daughter's hand. I never gave you the right to bury her inside my company. For the first time, Noah looked around the table not as a leader, but as a man searching for rescue, and he found only the faces of people who had finally understood the difference between loyalty and deception. My father's lawyer began distributing packets. Effective immediately, my father said. Noah Vale is suspended from all executive duties pending investigation. His signing authority is revoked. His access to Hartwell systems is terminated. Any board proposal submitted under maternal leave governance is withdrawn, and all proxy changes executed in the past 6 months are under legal review. Noah looked at me then, and the mask was gone. You did this, he said. I shook my head, not with anger, but with a strange sadness for the boy my family had once mistaken for a blessing. Noah, you did this. I only survived long enough to show everyone. His eyes moved to Clara, then to my mother, then to my father, and finally back to me. You'll regret this. I placed both hands on the table and leaned forward, steady enough now to speak without raising my voice. The only thing I regret, I said, is mistaking being handled for being loved. Security entered without drama. There was no shouting, no grand collapse, no theatrical confession. Only 2 men standing beside Noah while he understood, piece by piece, that the doors my family had once opened for him were now closing in the same order. When the boardroom doors shut behind him, the air did not feel victorious. It felt clean. And for the first time since the clinic, I could breathe without feeling like I was borrowing air from someone who wanted it back. Noah did not leave Hartwell quietly. Men like him rarely do, because when a man has spent years confusing permission with power, the loss of a key feels to him like theft. By that evening, his lawyers had already sent 3 letters. By the next morning, he had called 2 board members, my father's former chief counsel, and in a moment of desperation so humiliating I almost felt sorry for him, my mother. She did not answer. Instead, she placed his name on the blocked list, then sat beside me in the private treatment room at Dr. Shaw's clinic while the first infusion entered my bloodstream. It was strange how quiet survival can be. There were no cameras, no speeches, no dramatic music, just a clear tube, a slow drip, my mother's hand around mine, and my father standing by the window with his back turned, because he did not want me to see him cry. Dr. Shaw monitored everything carefully. The treatment was not magic, and it did not erase the danger, but it gave me back something Noah had tried to steal before he stole the company: a chance. Within a week, the investigation at Hartwell widened. The outside legal team found hidden routing instructions, altered access permissions, drafts of proxy expansions, and communications that tied Noah to every step of the plan he tried to call protection. Dr. Calloway resigned from Marrow Clinic before the medical board hearing even began. Hartwell's board voted unanimously to remove Noah from all executive authority, and the public statement was clean, cold, and devastating. Noah Vale has been suspended pending investigation into serious breaches of fiduciary duty and governance ethics. No mention of my pregnancy. No mention of Clara. No mention of attempted erasure. That came later through lawyers, regulators, and the kind of consequences that do not need to be loud to be permanent. Clara left him before he could decide what story to tell her next. She sent me one message 3 days after the board meeting. I am keeping my son away from him. I am sorry I believed him. I stared at the screen for a long time before answering. Raise him free, that was all. I did not forgive her that day, and I will not pretend pain becomes clean just because 2 women discover they were lied to by the same man. But I believed her child deserved a beginning untouched by the Hartwell future. Noah had tried to steal for him. As for Noah, he tried to become tragic. He sent one final email from an account his lawyers probably did not know about, full of wounded sentences about betrayal, gratitude, and how my family had never truly let him belong. He wrote that I had turned everyone against him. He wrote that I had destroyed the only home he had ever known. For a long time, I looked at those words without feeling anger. Then I deleted them, because the truth was simple. My family had given Noah a home, but he had mistaken shelter for entitlement. My parents had given him love, but he had treated it like a debt we would spend the rest of our lives repaying. I had given him trust, and he had used it as a hallway into every locked room of my life. Deleting that email did not feel like revenge. It felt like closing a window during a storm. The twins were born 6 weeks early, on a rainy Sunday morning, in a hospital where every doctor spoke to me first. My father was in the hallway, my mother was beside me. Dr. Sh was calm, direct, and very much in charge. There were frightening moments. The kind people soften later when they retell birth stories at family dinners. But I remember one thing clearly, the first cry, then the second. 2 daughters, small, furious, alive. I named them Rose and Elian. After my grandmothers, women who had both survived things they were never allowed to fully name. When my father held Rose for the first time, his hands shook so badly the nurse had to help him. He looked down at her tiny face, then at me, and whispered, "I should have protected you sooner." I was too tired to speak for a moment, so I reached for his hand. "You came back," I said finally. "That matters." My mother held Elian by the window, the morning light touching both their faces, and for the first time in months, the room did not feel managed. It felt lived in, imperfect, breathing. Months later, I returned to Hartwell, not as the daughter being protected, not as the pregnant wife being managed, and not as the fragile heiress Noah had tried to write into absence. I returned as chairwoman. My first vote was to restructure executive authority so that no spouse, no advisor, no beloved outsider could ever again hold silent power over a Hart family member's voice. My second was to create a maternal health fund under Hartwell's foundation, independent from corporate influence, because no woman should need a boardroom war to learn what is happening inside her own body. Sometimes people ask if I hate Noah. I do not know if hate is the word. Hate feels too intimate now. What I feel is distance, clean, bright, necessary distance. There are mornings when Rose and Elian sleep against my chest, and the house is so quiet I can hear the rain tapping softly against the windows. On those mornings, I think of the boy who once stood in our hallway with snow melting from his sleeves, and I let myself grieve him for a moment. Then I remember the man he chose to become, and I let that grief go. Noah thought being loved by my family made him a heart. He was wrong. Family is not the door you walk through when you are hungry, then lock behind you when you want the house for yourself. Family is what you protect when no one is watching. Family is the hand that asks what you need, instead of deciding what you are allowed to know. My daughters will grow up knowing that. They will know love is not control dressed in a gentle voice. They will know protection does not require silence. They will know trust is sacred, but never blind. And one day, when they are old enough to ask why their father is not in our family photographs, I will tell them the truth in words they can carry. I will tell them that once, their mother loved a man who mistook kindness for weakness, and that when he tried to build a future on her absence, she came back, opened the doors, and took her name, her company, her children, and her life back. Not all at once, not loudly, but completely.